You're listening to Fox City's Murder and Mayhem, your bi-weekly dose of true crime history in a small rural community of Wisconsin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fox City's Murder and Mayhem. I'm Eric.
I'm Gavin.
And Gavin, we're back again. Where are we off to on our travels today?
We are in Door County.
Ooh. I think we may have talked a little bit about this episode on the previous episode.
It's certainly possible.
This is the carbonic.
Oh no, you remembered.
Is it an acid?
Remembered. Okay.
That's right.
Oh no.
See this. You want to know why I remember that?
Because you just edited it.
Yeah, because literally, I'm so far behind on editing. I just finally got that edited.
Okay. Well, yes, sir. This is the follow-up to that episode. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. So our main character for this is going to be a woman named Blanche. And the newspapers, the government reports, all that, give her last name as Ostrom. But for some reason, on the gravestones, it's Ostran with an N. I'm going to say Ostrom because that's what everything says. I don't know why there's a discrepancy between every single record and the cemetery.
That's so weird. Do you think they just misprinted the gravestone and said, well, that's good enough?
I don't, because the whole family's graves are spelled like that. So I don't know why there was a difference there, but whatever.
That is really interesting.
Yes. So Blanche, prior to being married, her name is Blanche Letty, and she marries Edwin Ostrom. They're from Liberty Grove in Door County. They have 6 children, including Norman, Leland, and Evangeline. 14-year-old Leland passed away in 1924 from diabetes. Passing away from diabetes at age 14, that's rough.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah. Then the father, Edwin, passed away prematurely in 1926 from appendicitis, leaving Blanche the head of the family and having to run the farm.
All right, so this story's already not off to a good start, huh?
Yes. June 6, 1928. Blanche's daughter, Evangeline, is 18 years old, and she gives birth to a girl that she had with a local man named Matt McOlish. McOlish is another one of these weird ones where he goes by McOlish. His kids later in life will go by McOlish. But apparently, his name originally is closer to Micolasack, but they changed it to McOlish because it's apparently easier. I don't know.
Isn't it great, like back in the day when you could just, I think I'm just going to call myself this instead. And there's okay, just write it down and we'll call it good to go. So I can't even imagine what would go into changing a name today.
I don't think it's hard, but it'd be a little bit more.
Yeah.
So the girl is born. The doctor arrives and says, "Yep, it's a healthy 7.5-pound baby girl. Congratulations." 2 days later, Blanche, the mother or now the grandmother of the baby, tried to get the baby accepted by an orphanage in Green Bay, but was denied. On the way back...
Did the mother know she was doing this?
I think so.
Okay.
On the drive back, she pulled off of Highway 57 onto the side road, just to the south of a curve known as the Pines, near Fairland, and killed the child with carbolic acid.
Oh my God.
She continued on home and buried the child in a chicken yard behind the Ostrom house. The doctor returned a few days later to check up on the baby. Evangeline said the child had been brought to an orphanage. Later, Blanche, who had been at a church meeting when the doctor arrived, called the doctor to inform him that the child had died after choking on a sugar water mixture, and she did not tell her daughter because it would upset her, and instead had told the daughter that she went to an orphanage. That same day, Matt McOlish called the doctor and said the baby was also in an orphanage and was brought there by him and Blanche. Because of these conflicting stories, the doctor was a little bit confused.
Nobody actually knows what happened to this child.
Yeah. He checked with the coroner, and the coroner said, well, we don't have any record of them asking for a burial permit. So if the child is dead, we don't know about it here at the county. So now no one's like, did the baby die choking? Is the baby in the orphanage? How come nobody seems to know which version is true?
Did anybody go and ask because it was the mother that said that the baby had died choking, right?
Yeah.
So why didn't they go to the mother and say, so where's the body?
Well, that's where it's going. That's where it's going. The coroner, being suspicious now, authorized by the district attorney, he conducted an investigation and was able to find the grave near a lilac bush and exhumed the baby, which was inside of a small pasteboard box, using a small shovel, and then brought the body to the local funeral home. Now, Blanche knew that he had done this. She was told that the baby was dug up because she had improperly buried a baby without getting a burial permit. So the reason why they were digging up the baby, they might have been a little less than honest with her about, but she was aware that they were digging in her yard.
Mm-hmm.
She apparently did not want them to dig up the baby because before the coroner dug up the child, Blanche offered them all of her property and all of her money if they would just leave the baby undisturbed.
Wow. Okay. That's not suspicious at all.
That's not suspicious. Once brought back to the funeral home, the cause of death was obvious. But to be safe, they called in a pathologist from Milwaukee, and he performed an autopsy. This doctor, a man named Dr. Edward Milosevic, was said to have performed over 8,000 autopsies.
Wow.
And had recently handled a high-profile case in Milwaukee, which is not relevant, so I'm not even going to talk about that. But this guy was a pretty big deal. After World War II, so this is many, many years after this story, but after World War II, they even flew him out to Poland to go through a mass grave of 10,000 people and try to get that sorted out. So,
wow.
So this guy isn't just like a local celebrity. This guy's like the master of autopsies.
Apparently. I mean, or he's the one willing to do these weird autopsies.
Yeah. I mean, somebody has to be the guy, I guess. The pathologist identified that there had been a small blow on the head, but mostly it was telltale signs of carbolic acid. The lower portion of the baby's stomach was shriveled up, and the smell of the acid was actually still smellable on the baby's lips.
This acid sounds just terrible.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. A coroner's inquest was held a few days later, and the coroner's jury declared that the death was a homicide, and the two suspects were arrested. The two suspects were the grandmother and the father of the child.
But not the daughter, interesting.
Not the daughter.
And now, the grandmother is the mother's mother,
yes,
right? Okay.
The mother's mother, yes.
Which is also just suspicious to me. Is that so the dad and the mom of the mom are conspiring to kill the child while the actual mother is in the dark? That seems weird to me.
Well, that is the version of the story that we're going with.
Mm-hmm.
The newspaper noted this would be the first murder trial in Door County in the past 12 years. So it's not super common for Door County to have murders, and definitely baby murders are not very common at all.
Mm-hmm.
Between her arrest and her preliminary hearing, Blanche put the blame on herself and downplayed the role of Matt McOlish. She insisted to the judge that the trip to Green Bay never even happened. She said, we didn't even go to an orphanage. The poisoning happened before they ever left. She also downplayed the role of her son Norman, who had already come forward to authorities saying that he was the one who had buried the baby. Norman had also told authorities that the Green Bay trip had happened as far as he knew, so he thought that they went to an orphanage. The Door County News had a short editorial on Blanche, saying her motives were love and respectability, but the outcome was a bigger disgrace than the one that she tried to cover up. The editor concluded, quote, "Fate had decreed that the babe should be brought into this world, and it was not for Mrs. Ostrom or any other human being to decide whether or not it should again leave." So the editorial explains this is what they're saying the motive is here, is that the baby was born to unmarried parents.
Okay.
And that would be a social disgrace.
Right.
So the grandmother didn't want her daughter to have a child that while she wasn't married.
Okay.
So if she covered it up, her daughter wouldn't be a disgrace.
Gotcha.
However, now they have the disgrace of murdering a baby.
Yeah, which seems like even in these times, I think would be considerably worse than having a child out of wedlock.
Yeah. So the editorial is like, we get why you did it. Like, we get it, but not okay.
Yeah.
Soon after, Blanche changed her confession and now said that the poison was bought on the way back from Green Bay. She's like, okay, we did go to Green Bay. We went to an orphanage. We were turned away. We stopped on the way back. Matt McOlish purchased the carbolic acid at a Green Bay drugstore. I'm the one who gave it to the baby on the drive home. The district attorney went to Green Bay and found the store where the poison was sold. And it did appear that Matt McOlish was the buyer of the poison, according to the receipts on file.
Okay, so now he's looking a lot less innocent.
Yeah. McOlish, has up to this point, had declined to make any public statements at all. It went to trial in early September 1928, so, pretty quick, couple months from the murder to the trial. Blanche pleads guilty. Like, she's already basically told everybody, I poisoned the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So she pleads guilty, and she's waiting to be sentenced. Matt McOlish pleads not guilty. His defense was that he was actually not in the car when the murder happened, and he was only told by Blanche after the fact. He didn't deny that he bought the carbolic acid, but he claims that he didn't know why Blanche wanted it. When he came back to the car and found that the baby was dead, this was shocking to him. He did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's his version of the story now. The jury left at 3:30 p.m. They came back at 8 p.m. that same day, and they declared that Matt McOlish was guilty of murder. They did not believe that he had no idea what was going on. Both Blanche and Matt McOlish were sentenced by the judge to life in prison. The judge expressed at the time of the sentence that he actually didn't want to sentence either of them to life in prison, but unfortunately the statute for first-degree murder said, I have to give you life in prison. Like, it's written that way, it's beyond my control. He was able to put some modifications on there, and he said, I can order that you can't be put in solitary confinement. I can order that you can't be, put to hard labor, breaking rocks in the hot sun. He's like, but the length of the sentence, I have no control over. He said if they ever sought a pardon from the governor, that he would not stand in their way. The prosecutor, likewise, did not want them to spend life in prison. He says, I have to prosecute you. You murdered a baby. I don't want you to spend life in prison either. But again, we don't have a choice. So he's like, I'm sorry about that. At the sentencing, 75 friends of the two had also signed a petition asking for clemency. The judge said, although he couldn't do anything about the petition. He would put it on file, so if they ever did seek a pardon, that this petition would be on file. The jury also specifically asked for leniency and were denied. The judge told the jury, I get it. You don't want to send them to life in prison, but we have to.
That's so weird.
Yeah. This was noted as the first time in Door County history that a woman had received life in prison. So that was a bit unusual in that sense. The sheriff personally drove the pair of them to Waupun State Prison, and so that's where they go into prison now. There's more to the story.
Okay, so there's things that happen in prison. First, before we jump into what happens in prison, I want your thoughts on why was everybody so wanting to let them go? You know, like, kill a baby.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty thing that's going to get a lot of people to hate you.
Yes.
So why do you think that they look... I mean, we're not just talking the judge or the... Everybody was like, we don't want to give you life in prison for this.
I have a couple thoughts on that. First of all, Door County at this point in time is very small.
Mm-hmm.
I think that everybody knows everybody. Like, we didn't talk about it, but apparently finding a jury was really difficult in this case.
Because
everybody knew them or knew somebody who knew them. So it was really challenging just to get the jury in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people were sympathetic because they already knew who these people were.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know the reason for this. This would be really interesting if somebody knows the answer. But I think people felt very differently about punishment 100 years ago than they do now. Because now, if you murder somebody and you get life in prison, we're kind of like, yeah, that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like 100 years ago, if you got 15 to 20 years in prison, everyone's like, yeah, that's good. That's fair. And I don't know where the shift came in, where people went from being like, oh, yeah, murder is bad, but you still deserve a second chance in life, or, you know, we should still forgive you. Instead of just being like, no, you're a problem, you're gone.
I wonder if it's just because now, because of media, we see the people that we see are murderers we see the monsters.
Yeah.
We see the Jeffrey Dahmers. We see I can't even think of another good name, but I mean, I think Jeffrey Dahmer pretty much sums it all up. And where maybe back then, they thought of a murderer as somebody who did something stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's weird because, I'll see that regularly. I mean, even up through like the 1950s, maybe even the 1960s, where it's rare for somebody to spend more than 20 years in prison for a murder.
Mm-hmm.
And like now, if you got out after 20 years for a murder, I think people would throw a fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what caused that change, but there's definitely a different opinion back then. I mean, in this case, I feel this is bad. I mean, all murder is bad. If you're going to kill a baby, and please don't. Again, listeners at home, please do not kill a baby. But if you're going to kill a baby,
just like suicide, don't use carbolic acid for the first.
Don't do it. But like, there's ways that the baby could suffer less.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, let's be honest. Cover up the baby's mouth for however long it takes. That's probably a much more peaceful way to go than to have your insides burnt out.
Yes.
Isn't that what we talked about happens?
That is what happens. It's an acid. Everything, lips, tongue, throat, everything right on down is going to be scorched. It's going to hurt like hell. It seems to be fairly quick, but even so, like, that is not not a humane choice. So that to me makes this, it's never cool to kill a baby. But like this is worse. Like this was a poor choice.
I have one more theory on the whole people not wanting to give them life. And I just want to get your feedback on this.
Sure.
How much do you think that stigma of, like you said, they said that they killed this baby because they had it out of wedlock and they didn't want to have the daughter's image tainted by having a child out of wedlock.
I think that factors in.
Yeah, like was that an intense enough thing that people would be like, yeah, I would probably kill a kid in that. I don't really know how that mindset worked back then. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I don't think it would be enough that, like, if you tried to, and they didn't try to use it as a defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the mother pleaded guilty. Like, she didn't plead not guilty and then explain herself of why. So, like, they know that's not a valid reason. I think it would definitely be sympathetic. Like, the jury would be like, okay, we get it. I don't know that would sway them enough that they wouldn't want you to go to prison for it, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's...
Yeah, well,
that's a weird thing. I mean, that's like, you know, the same thing where, like, if it used to be hard to get a divorce, so you kill your spouse instead of trying to get a divorce, like, that doesn't make it okay.
It doesn't make it okay, but I bet you since they've made it easier to get a divorce, a lot less people kill their spouses.
I don't know.
Like,
maybe.
I'm going to guess that is a less common thing now because, well, you can just get a divorce.
Maybe.
Whereas there was a whole lot of things more. There's still a lot of things that go in if you're thinking about getting a divorce, but there's a whole lot more things back 20 years ago because you didn't know how people were going to even view you because you had gotten a divorce type thing. So
yeah.
But anyways, continue on with the story. I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a firm answer to you on that one. So they go to prison in 1928. By 1932, it's 4 years later. They both apply for pardons. This is apparently the earliest they could legally apply for a pardon. They're denied. First time out of the gate, they're denied. In December 1935, Judge Ferguson, who is not really involved in this at all, but Judge Ferguson apparently knows about this case, and he thinks that this was a terrible outcome. So he personally goes to the State Pardon Board on their behalf, and he gives an impassioned speech. He declared, quote, "The mother, when taken to the county jail, admitted on 2 occasions that Matt McOlish had nothing to do with the poisoning, but those who heard the testimony were not given an opportunity to appear before the court. When the mother took the witness stand, however, she changed her testimony and declared that Matt McOlish had held the child's nose while she poured the carbolic acid down its throat. Here's the peculiar part of that trial. The doctor who performed the post-mortem on the infant testified that the infant had not only been poisoned, but had received a crushing blow in the back of the head. This testimony was passed over." So the judge is arguing 2 things. He's like, one, there's no evidence that anybody was holding this baby's nose. He's like, that's nonsense. He's like, first of all, you wouldn't have to do that to a newborn baby. Second, if you hit it in the head first, it's already going to be whatever. And second of all, these guys in the jail should have been allowed to testify that her earlier confession was different, so that the version that she told at trial had its doubts.
Okay.
You know, the fact that she could only tell the version where Matt McOlish looked guilty is unfair to him.
Yeah, well, and I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah. The judge continued, quote, "Matt was a simple backwoods boy without much education. He was not a sophisticated city gangster. He lived 45 miles from the railroad, and he had lived a spotless life up to the time of this tragedy. Here are signatures of his neighbors attesting to his character and asking clemency for a lad whose whole life is before him and who is suffering for a crime in which he took no part. He brought with him several hundred signatures.
Wow.
Much more than the 75 they had before. And further added that he had since learned that Matt McCulloch had initially taken out a marriage license when he heard about the baby, hoping to do right, but that Blanche did not want the scandal of a premarital baby on her family. So Blanche was the one who had really pushed for this. Clarify if that wasn't clear. When Matt McCulloch learned that Evangeline was going to have a baby, he tried to get a marriage license to make it right.
Oh, okay.
And Blanche was still like, that's not good enough because people can do the math and they're going to figure out that she was already pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have that at trial, but they found since then that he had applied for a marriage license. So he tried to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
So he's looking like less and less like the bad guy the more that they look into it. Ultimately, Governor La Follette reduced Matt McCulloch's sentence from life in prison down to 15 years. Because of good behavior, he was actually released at the end of the same year the sentence was reduced, spending a grand total of 8 years in prison.
Well, but that's still wholly unfair considering the fact that he probably didn't do anything other than get a girl pregnant.
He may not have done anything. It's never 100% clear.
Right. I should not. But there's a good possibility that he's innocent.
Yeah.
Completely.
Blanche applied for a pardon, but she only had hers reduced from life down to 25 years. So she did not get out so quick. She tries again and again to get things reduced. A little bit later, it gets reduced down from 25 to 20 years. She's working her way down. She's getting the governor to go, okay. And then she is finally released slightly more than 10, 12 years into the sentence. So she gets out as well. And then we're going to have some follow-up on these individuals. If you want to jump in at this time, you can. Otherwise,
I'm still really hung. I feel like there's something missing from this story. I really do, because I feel like the amount of people that came to this and said that this was unfair, blah, blah, blah. It's just, there has to be something missing. Like, something that was like, I don't know.
Well, and I will tell you, I will apologize to you and to the listeners that I didn't give this 100%. Because I happen to know that there are 3 file folders sitting in Madison with the state pardon board.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to read those. And they're going to tell me more because they're going to have the letters from people explaining why they should be released. But you know what? I didn't drive to Madison and look at them. So,
listeners, I want to point out that I'm pretty sure I offered to drive to Madison with Gavin to read these things.
So
when he was talking about doing it, and he just didn't do it.
Yeah, I just didn't do it. So there's more information out there on this. If people wanted to, they could find more information. For all I know, it is also still on file in Door County at the police station there. I don't know that one way or the other. But the pardon files are definitely still in existence.
And the pardon files are in Madison.
They're at the Historical Society in Madison, yes.
So if we have a listener that is in the Madison area and could go get a hold of those documents for you, we would be great. Would be greatly appreciated.
I would appreciate that greatly. If you have a flash drive, you can even copy them for free.
Yeah, so there you go. So if one of these listeners wants to get a hold of these documents for us, email us, milwaukeemafia@gmail.com, because we would love it. love it if to see these, because I really think there's something missing from this story.
I guarantee you there's more in here somewhere, but
I think there's a big piece missing.
Okay. Maybe there's a big piece
because it's just so weird how so many people have these people's back. And yeah, okay, it's a small community, everybody knows each other, but there's something more there.
Okay, fine. Then if people want to do that for us, that would be great. Otherwise, I guess we'll have to come back to this at some point because you're just not satisfied.
I'm not satisfied.
Okay. So, just a quick follow-up on the people here. The murder was in 1928. So now we're jumping ahead. We're going to give what happened to the people. 1958, 30 years later, Norman Ostrom, the son of Blanche who buried the baby, at age 49, he drowns while he's on a 29-foot steel boat fishing. The boat sinks, he drowns, and he washes up near Bailey's Harbor in Door County. He left behind a wife and 2 daughters, so sad end for Norman. Following her release from prison, Blanche moved to Michigan. She just got out.
She's like, I'm out of here.
I don't know what would make her get up and move when she still got family in Door County. But she apparently was not looked on as favorably as the boy was.
Well, and I mean, I would guess that you, like you said, Door County's small, and everybody knows what you did, and everybody's going to look at you differently. She probably just wanted to get away from, get someplace where nobody knew who she was.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she moves to Michigan. She remarries. Apparently lives a pretty uneventful life after that. Passes away in 1984. Evangeline, the daughter, marries a man named Edward Reith in 1931. They have at least one child. Evangeline passes away in Sturgeon Bay in the year 2000.
Oh, wow.
Her child, Arlene, passed away in 2012. There might have been more children, but if there were, I'm not going to say because they would still be alive. But the daughter that I'm aware of passed away in 2012. Matt McOlish. He ended up marrying a woman named Elaine City of Ellison Bay on September 17th, 1938. Within a year of being released of prison.
Wow.
He's ready to go. The couple had 3 children, Myron, Marvel, and Joel. He started out as an oiler on the steamship Clements Rice and worked his way up to the chief engineer for the Red Arrow Steamship Company. So he did pretty well for himself. His son Myron went to the UW-Madison where he studied commerce, and he married a woman named Elaine who was an engineering teacher. His daughter Marvel, which is a sweet name, by the way, in 1965 was chosen to represent Door County in the annual Alice in Dairyland contest. She was the valedictorian of her high school, a member of the National Honor Society, played the saxophone and guitar, and was a student at the UW-Madison studying medical technology.
Good on her.
Yes. The third son named Joel, I don't know much about other than that he moved to Racine. Guy gets arrested, charged, sentenced, thrown in prison for murdering a child, ends up getting out, becomes the chief engineer of a steamship company, which is a big deal when you're in Door County. You should know, listeners should know, but if you don't, Door County is essentially, now it's tourism, but prior to it being tourism, you pretty much worked in the lake. You're going to do something in the lake. Mm-hmm. So being the chief engineer of a steamship company is probably a pretty good job in Door County.
Absolutely.
And his kids going to UW-Madison in the 1960s before a lot of people went to college yet. I mean,
and all of them did, so that sends up a signal that their parents were quite well off.
Their parents did well. The kids had good grades. Everything seemed to have turned out very well for this guy, despite this major setback early in life.
And it's interesting because I think what your story here does a great job of symbolizing is just how I think a lot of us think when somebody murders somebody that the person that's doing the murdering is always a monster.
Yeah.
And I think this shows really clearly that sometimes killing somebody is just a mistake. It's just a stupid thing that people do that they shouldn't have done.
Yeah. So,
and not to say that they shouldn't be punished for that, but to say, I think we need to realize that not everybody that has done something like that is a monster.
Right. And that's the point I kind of make on here. I want this to be, in some way, I don't know if you want to say it's an inspiring story, but Matt McColish, I mean, he's like 18 years old at the time of the murder. In modern day, we would say he's still a child. I mean, legally he's an adult, but 18 we still would generally think of as a child. He doesn't know what's going on. He's probably panicking. He's being told whatever by his girlfriend's mom.
Yeah.
You know, and he's going to do whatever she says. Mm-hmm. So, like, yeah, this guy is not a monster. He's a kid who's caught in a bad situation. And while the outcome was probably not a good outcome, we can understand what went through to get him to that point, you know? So the fact that he comes out the other end of prison and actually makes a huge success of himself, despite the fact, you know, he has to go apply for jobs, and they're like, "Aren't you the guy who murdered the baby?"
yeah, no kidding.
You know, he did really well, so good on him. The final thing I wanted to say was that Evangeline Ostrom and Matt McColish both lived in Door County for over 50 years. And I wonder, like, did they cross paths?
You would think so.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is odd, because obviously their relationship didn't work out. But it'd still be kind of weird that, you know, that this person that you're going to kind of be tied to for the rest of your life because of this terrible incident, you're still going to bump into them, even though you're married and you have kids of your own. And then along with it, I'm like, I wonder if their children, Evangeline's children and Matt's children,
became friends in high school.
Well, no, but like, did they know that they had a murdered sister, or did the community just really kind of cover that up?
I think if I had to venture a guess, I was gonna say that after this event happened, it was kind of one of those things where nobody ever talked about it again.
Yeah,
you know.
But that'd be weird. That'd be weird. Be like one day, you know, be like, hey, you realize your dad went to prison because he murdered your sister, right? Like, what? Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. That's my story. I guess I'll have to come back to it some point in the future. It'll be a little while because as you know, we have a few related, not related to this, but a few related episodes that'll be coming up on the stream. So, but we'll come back to it if you want me to, I guess.
I think we should definitely get a hold of, I mean, and maybe you'll get a hold of these documents and they won't really tell you anything, but I just find this story so interesting how everybody had their back.
They might not have the missing piece you want them to have, but I guarantee you they're going to have more background of who these people were. Yeah, at the very least.
And maybe they were just all really loved people in the community, and that's it. It doesn't go any further than that, but it's just weird that you've got a random judge wasn't even the judge on the case going there to try and get their sentence reduced and stuff.
Yeah.
Another thing I would be interested.
Well, yeah, for people like parole and pardon files are like really, really great documents, because when you can't find the original court cases or police files, and a lot of times you can, but if you can't, they fill in a lot of those pieces, because you have to convince the pardon board. And the pardon board has to convince the governor that this person should be pardoned. And as part of that, you have to say what they did and why they should still be forgiven. So a lot of the original stuff is in these files.
And another thing you said that I find interesting is that you said, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they gave this person both of these two life because they had to.
They had to. That was the statute, yeah.
Now, you said in the 60s, you can remember, you've seen a lot of times from like 40s, 50s, and even sometimes in the 60s where they only got 15 years for a murder.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is this the first time in the history of Door County that they had to give a life sentence just because it was on the books that you had? Like, was that law changed to it has to be a life sentence around this time? And maybe that's why so many people stepped in and thought it was unfair, because so many people thought that change was unfair.
I would say, to the best of my knowledge, that right now, first-degree murder still has life in prison. I think there's both life in prison with parole and life in prison without the possibility of parole. I believe those are the two choices you get if you're convicted of first-degree murder. I would say probably the big difference is that there's an increasing move to have second-degree murder or manslaughter or involuntary homicide, and not everybody is charged with first-degree murder anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I don't know what the laws on the books were at the time. But I suspect that if the laws were similar to the way they are now, Matt McOlish would not have been charged with first-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's...
he might have even been just like an accessory to murder or something.
Exactly.
Like that.
Because, like, no matter how you look at this, there's no version of the story where he's the active participant in it.
Right.
So I'm thinking, he would not get charged with first-degree murder under today's laws. So I'm wondering if that's part of it, is if at this point in time the state hadn't differentiated that many different levels yet.
Okay, and maybe that could be the flip side of it is that maybe they were in the process of making that transition at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody saw this case as an example of how the laws used to be really unfair.
Yeah, it could be.
You know what I mean?
It could be.
But there is something that is bringing everybody
These
to
are
their
bigger
side.
questions than I know the answer. These are great questions. Your questions are really on point this time. But they're ones that I don't know. I do not know the history of when the statutes are changed. That's something beyond me.
I'm just trying to trick, because I don't have the patience to do this research. So I ask the questions.
Oh, I see.
With hopes that Gavin gets intrigued and then does the research, because he has the patience to actually sit down and research it. So
I mean,
it's a sick game I play, man. So
I see. Well, maybe you'll. I mean, I'm not that I'm not interested. So maybe you'll trick me.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to get you interested.
Okay.
So not that you're not interested, but make you realize how
but
interested you
no
are.
matter what, you did make me think about an angle that I wasn't thinking about. So now I will be curious to be like, oh yeah, why first degree murder and not something else? When to me, the mother, yeah, first degree, I get it. The boy, I would say, I don't know. So there's got to be a reason they went the way they went. And now, yeah, I guess maybe they just didn't have second degree yet. They didn't have that on the books.
And that's
I don't
a good
know.
possibility. So
yeah, fine. I can't promise you I'm going to look into it, but you got me curious.
So did you say that there was one little piece left?
Nope, that was it.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Yep.
I thought you said there was something else. So, but the other thing that this story really brought up an interest in me too, just to kind of wet in your head about researching.
Sure. Wow.
Is I'm really interested in the history.
Not going to let this go.
Is the history of carbolic acid. I don't even know how easy that would be to research, but just figure out, first of all, what happened. Is carbolic acid just something that's still out there, but under a different name? Maybe there is carbolic acid out there. I don't even know.
Yeah. And I don't have a good answer to that because I briefly looked, and I'm not even going to lie to listeners. By briefly look, what I mean is I looked at the Wikipedia.
No, see, and I thought maybe even just the Wikipedia would have that kind of
that's what I thought. I was I'm not going to do a deep dive on this, but I'm I want to kind of at least get a sense. And it really wasn't very clear to me.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, so...
And maybe this was just a phenomenon that we really don't understand where it came from.
Yeah.
So
it could be figured out. I don't know that I got the motivation to do it. Unless another case comes up with carbolic acid, I think this phase of ours is done for now.
The carbolic acid is over.
If another carbolic acid murder comes up, we'll do it. We'll look into it a little deeper. But for now, I think this is the end of that. So segue or whatever.
So now we have another assignment for our listeners. Be on the lookout for carbolic acid murder.
Yeah.
All right. So
I'm sure there are some. I mean, no doubt of that.
All right. So with that, we can wrap this episode up unless you got anything else, Gavin, you want to talk about?
No, that's it.
All right.
I feel like you're really running this one long.
It is getting a little long. So.
Okay.
So we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode, and thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Fox City's Murder and Mayhem. Join us in 2 weeks for another exciting episode of Murder and Mayhem.
Hey entrepreneurs and website owners, if you're ready to take your online presence to the next level, you need a reliable web host, and that's where HostGator comes in. HostGator is your one-stop solution for easy, affordable, and powerful web hosting. Whether you're launching a blog, an online store, or anything in between, HostGator's got you covered. Don't miss out on creating the website you've always wanted. Visit krmpods.com/HostGator today and let your online journey begin.